All right, Black is back. Lakim Shabazz, strictly old school conscious hip hop. We started our morning with the Redhead Kingpin. Um, do the right thing. Do the right thing. Man, Redhead Kingpin, where did he go? Where he at? And then followed by a short snippet from an interview given by Steve Coakley. If you don't know Steve Coakley, like he said, he's the man that names the names. He was a brother who I think in the height of what was called the Black Books era in the 90s, the reawakening consciousness of the 90s, I think that Steve Coakley was overlooked. And I think one of the reasons Steve Coakley was is not counted amongst many of the other better known scholars of that era is because he was not, I don't know, he wasn't a very formal in his approach, but he was very accurate, very thorough in his approach. And like he said, Steve Coakley named the names. So anyway, he was the one who started talking about, I think, and I credit him greatly as one who was very aggressive about bringing class analysis with the blue boule. He introduced me to a strict internal class analysis because I understood class analysis as it relates to the oppressor system, the systems and institutions of white domination and the white elites. But for some time, I never really thought about internal class analysis and the black bourgeoisie or black pseudo bourgeoisie. And even now, there is a deficit in class analysis, internal, or what is called intraracial, not interracial, but intraracial class analysis. And it harms us quite a bit because we see black faces in high places and we think that we have allies and advocates in those high places, like Mayor Lori Lightfoot on our necks. And we think, hey, because they're black like us, they relate to our struggle and they must have our interests. And we also think mistakenly, I mean, it's a logical mistake. I could see how we could draw this conclusion, even though it is an inaccurate conclusion, that black people should understand that if they get into places of authority and subvert black people's interests, then potentially they will suffer the same consequences. So as Barack Obama is elected to office and he fails to confront the rising Third Reich, the rising right wing movements, as he was afraid to confront the racists in Congress. He didn't want to confront them because he didn't want to subvert his image, because Obama knew before we did. I knew, I said it too, when Obama left office, he was going to walk out of the White House into billionaire status because of the loyal service he provided for the economic and political elites. But anyway, we have this logical fallacy, this inaccurate conclusion that is based on logical analysis. That if a black person gets to become president, mayor, CEO, or any other position, greatest athlete, greatest rapper, entertainer, that if they do not represent the interest of the black collective while in that power position, then if not they personally, their offspring or their loved ones will be subjected to ongoing oppression. So you would think Obama as president would think, look, I got two black daughters who have the potential to have two black babies, who will have more black babies. So while I'm here, I should do something in the interest of black people. That's a logical thing, but they don't. They should, even for their own good, even if it's their own self-serving interest. But these black people, like a lot of working class and poor black people, believe that they can create a small pocket of black safety, a small pocket of safety, security, wealth. They believe that they can integrate, and the oppressor tells them that you're special, you're not like all the other savages, you're not like all the other dysgenic mud people, you're one of the good ones, and we like you, and we'll take care of you even if we slaughter everyone else. But again, not unique to African people. There were Jews in Nazi Germany who believed they could become honorary Aryans, and some Jews did reach the level of honorary Aryanhood, but as soon as it became convenient, the Nazis sold them out too. There was also Native Americans, many Native American nations, many of the five civilized tribes The 5 civilized tribes work with the Europeans to subvert the non-civilized tribe, the non-cooperative tribes. So every group has its sellouts. That's not a thing that's unique to African people. All oppressed people have sellouts. There isn't one population of people who have come under oppression, subjugation, that did not produce sellouts. But what separates the people who spend countless generations under oppression versus people who can organize to effectively fight off and end their oppression is one of the key divergent factors between those two populations is how they deal with and how they treat sellouts. Some groups, like us, we tend to celebrate. We allow sellouts to be our heroes, our leaders, our spouses. In other groups, follow what Del Jones said: never let a traitor go unpunished. And I think we really sincerely have to begin to give our people incentives for representing our interest and give our people disincentives for betraying our interest. That needs to become a core value. Give African youth and African people with skills, talent, and resources, give them strong incentives for representing our interest, and give them stronger disincentives for subverting our interests. And this has to be conscious and deliberate and reproducible. Because if it isn't, we are always going to produce more sellouts and passive people than freedom fighters. But I digress. All that to say, shout out to Steve Coakley for his exposure and ongoing confrontation of the boule within the black community, and helping me to find and go on to like Franklin Frazier, the Black Bourgeoisie, and other texts, even the text Destruction of Black Civilization that talks about the many black elites who sold out Africans over generations, over almost 2,000 years. So that's Steve. And then we had Lakim Shabash, Do the Right Thing from Pure Righteousness. Well, that's my era of hip-hop. That's why I'm sitting here right now, because of all those militant rappers that broke through the cracks of the deliberate, when they were trying to deliberately dumb down hip-hop, and by extension dumb down entire generations and fuel and justify mass incarceration. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. You should check out Kidi Obiawadu, Hip-Hop in the New World Order. He breaks that down better than anyone. It's a kind of update. I mean, Del Jones also gets into it, but Kidi's analysis is more up-to-date than Del Jones. And rest in peace to Del Jones. And shout out to Baba Kidi Owadu, Chef Kidi, Conscious Rasta. Check him out if you haven't or don't. Anyway, let's move on. We don't have a lot of time. There's one thing I want to address. Y'all know that I'm constantly trying to change the lexicon. I want our analysis and the words we use to describe and label things to be more fitting, more functional, more radical, more to the core. And one of the things I've discouraged African people from saying is white privilege, when referring to the specific advantages that white people hold in the society over non-whites, because it is not a privilege. It is a pathological and criminal behavior that they are engaged in. And like I said, we don't call rapists sexually privileged. We don't call pedophiles age privileged. We don't call thief possession privilege. So we should not call racist racially or white privilege. So anyway, one of the examples I gave to illuminate that fact was that there was a man who had murdered white women, his whole white family really, but it was a man, he had murdered some women, and he was, after when the police came to apprehend him, he attempted to assault the police, and they took this dangerous murderer into custody without harming him. And we all know that unarmed black people who are not even engaged in crime, let alone something as drastic as murder, lose their lives when interacting with the police. But the police demonstrate a level of restraint we never see in our community when engaging with white people. So they said that this white man's ability to kill a white woman and attack the police who came to apprehend him for that murder was exercising white privilege. And I said, no, that is not privilege, that is pathology. If black people begin to coddle black murderers, we begin to coddle black murderers while killing unarmed white children, that would not be a privileged behavior, that would be a pathological, sick, predatory behavior. And then I pointed out the fact that the dead white woman who has her murderer, who is being coddled, who her murderer will be given every consideration, who her murderer might even walk free and be out to harm other people. So where's that dead white woman's privilege? So it's not privilege by any stretch of the imagination. And so someone, a black feminist, came to try to correct me and said, well, she was killed because she was a woman. She wasn't killed because she was white. And since his motivation was not to kill her as a result because she's white, then that means white privilege is still valid. And so I thought this was something I clarified. This is something that I thought Dick Gregory had clarified, because when black people are harmed, quote unquote, because we're black, and white people are not harmed because they're white. They might be harmed because they're poor, they might be harmed because they're illiterate, they might be harmed because they're female, they might be harmed because they're white and LGBTQ. But white people don't get preyed upon because they're white. And so I guess the ambition of these integrationist black people is not to not be harmed and preyed upon, but just make sure that our race, our skin color, our phenotype is not the impetus for that harm. So we want to be equal to white people and die because we're women, die because we're poor, die because we don't align with traditional gender roles, and die for any myriad of reasons that white people die for, or are harmed or preyed upon by other white people for, as long as you didn't do it because of my race. So if the cops started shooting white children because they're poor, then that's better than shooting them because they're black. So that was basically the argument. And I thoroughly understand that argument, even though I think it's absurd, because like I said, I've reiterated, Dick Gregory said, white people don't do harm to us because we're black. They don't harm us because we're black. They harm us because they're white. The negative is on them. They do it because we're right. And then Dick Gregory also broke down historically that white people have always had to have a nigger. Niggerdom and nigger status is not unique to black people. And you will find white people who either historically or geographically that are isolated and have no black people around engage in the same predatory and discriminatory behaviors against people who look exactly like they do. So if you go to Central or Eastern Europe, there are no black people there of significant numbers. If you go to Moscow or the major population centers, you might find 2 to 3% people of color. But they still have ethnic warfare. They have ethnic cleansing and racial warfare. And you go to the Bosnian Serbs and the Bosnian Croats, you put them in a room together, they look exactly alike. And one group is committing genocide against the other group, when it's not really genocide, it's really fratricide. When you kill people that look just like you. That's fratricide, not genocide. But I digress. Or if you go through most of Central Europe, You think about the Roma people, aka the Gypsies, and if you talk to the average Central European and you mention the Roma, they will say, oh, they're criminals. They don't have morals. They don't raise their kids. They just make babies. They steal. They deal drugs. They corrupt our otherwise pure culture. They say the exact same thing about the Roma people who are white that they say about black people. So it is inaccurate for black people, and black people, not only do we need to stop saying white privilege when we mean white pathology, we also need to understand that it is not because we're black. Because if we keep telling ourselves white people treat us the way they treat us because we're black, you're going to end up with Michael Jacksons. Black people who think, well, if I'm mistreated, if I'm discriminated against, if I'm preyed upon, if I am murdered by the police because I'm black, then I need to figure out how to be other than black. And then we have stupid black folks who rise to prominence, like Yvette Carnell and other members of the ADOS movement, who say we need to be made white. And any black person running around saying we need to be made white is painfully ignorant of white history. They know white folklore, they know white mythology, they know white propaganda, but they do not know white history, and they have a poor grasp on white current contemporary reality. Meaning that being made white would be an absolute, as bad off as it is for black people, as hard as it is out here for us, being made white would be an appreciable downgrade of our status. Or as Wilma Rudolph said when she was asked during her support for the civil rights movement, when she was asked, do you want to be equal to the white man, Wilma Rudolph? And Wilma Rudolph said, no, I don't want to stoop that low. So, to sum it up real quick, we are not targeted by white people because our skin is black. We have not been subjected to any behaviors by white people that they had not already exercised against their own people. And I'm going to say this every time, as often as I have to say it. When white people arrived on the shores of Asia, Africa, the New World, North and South America, they were already experts at slavery, genocide, colonization, discrimination, systematic rape, torture, psychological warfare, what they call persistent, permanent warfare. They came with the diseases. Where do you think they got the diseases from? Because they had plagues in Europe before they brought plagues to the New World. Christopher Columbus did not invent anything when he got off that boat. Christopher Columbus who's been around white folks all his life, didn't just become a racist and an enslaver when he saw his first African or first Native American. So they don't do us the way they do us because we're black. We could have been purple. We could have been whiter than them. They do it because we are vulnerable and they are predatory. They do it because they are pathological to their core and within their culture. And we could all wake up white tomorrow, and there would still be slavery, discrimination, oppression, systematic rape, genocide, warfare. If you look at the United States nuclear arsenal, and whenever there is a leak or a report, you look at the Pentagon reports that are leaked, you go look at the various exposés, you go read books like John Perkins' Economic Hitman, and you find that the United States commits espionage against Western European nation, its beloved allies, Canada, Australia, which we're going to talk about the new non-alignment movement if we have time. Some good things are happening in the world. But I digress. When we look at that, when you look at the United States nuclear arsenal, they got more bombs aimed at Europe. They got more nukes aimed at Europe than they have aimed at Africa. Because the United States sees Europe as a greater potential threat to its hegemony than Africa. United States, we talk about AFRICOM. The United States has had troops stationed in Western Europe, in Germany, Turkey, and these European nations longer and larger than are in Africa. White folks are not exempt. And we want equality to white folks because this racist systems allows these sick white people to go to Walmart and ball out harder than we do at Walmart. And we keep talking about this racial wealth gap. As we see white people snort opioids. We see white people snort opioids. We see all the insanity of wealth. Even white scholars are starting to talk about affluenza. All the wealth that white people have is not protecting them from madness, depressions, and all other psychological illnesses. So you can be crazy in a trailer park, or you can be out your damn mind on a private jet. Miserable people. And the only joy they get out of life, it seems, is inflicting greater pain on other races of people than they feel themselves. I swear some of these white races get physical orgasms seeing those little poor Honduran children die of pneumonia in cages on the southern border. That is pathological. That is not privilege. And it's kind of shocking to me that I'm getting so much pushback because black people want to be able to call white people privilege as an offense. I don't understand how we think we are offending white people when we call them privilege or supreme. I wish black folks would learn to insult each other the way we insult white people. You're privileged. You're supreme, supremacist. I mean, come on, that's the best slurs we can come up with for them. So, I'm gonna move on for that. I was just reading, and I was reviewing some of my posts, and I saw somebody kicking back at me. It was like, oh, white people they want to argue with me and say, oh, white folks are privileged. That's not a privileged position. That is nothing we need to aspire to. It's what we need to fight against. You aspire to secure privilege. You fight against and try to cure or cut out pathology. But move on. Donald Trump is coming to town. Hey, Donald Trump is coming to town. Hey, Donald Trump is coming to, I don't know. Well, I mean, we just gonna get to it until we get through it. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, Donald Trump is coming to town. Donald Trump is coming to Chicago because there is a meeting. Oh, and in fact, black folks, if you have the means, get out of Dodge. Because not only is Donald Trump coming to town, Chicago, all of the police chiefs around the nation for the International Chiefs of Police Conference. So police from Europe, police from all over the world, police chiefs are coming to Chicago. Now, I tried to find where this meeting was going to happen, but it's pretty hush-hush. In fact, the only reason that the police chiefs conference is being reported in the Chicago media, and I believe it's going to be at McCormick Place. And what they do is they're going to have all these police come, and they're going to have all these private for-profit corporations, many of them based in Israel, that are going to show these policemen crowd suppression tactics, how to police and suppress civilian populations. Non-lethal technologies like tasers, the new updated tasers. They're going to show them the various new technology for DNA collection, facial recognition, surveillance drones, and some even new civilian weaponized surveillance drones. So if you're in your house, instead of sending in the SWAT team, they'll send in some type of surveillance drones to gas you, to shock you, or to explode and blow you up and kill you like they killed that brother in Texas with the robot drone. The first, man, well, I can't get into that story because that's going to take me way off. But that's what the police are coming in Chicago, International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference. And I haven't heard anything from the grassroots arena whether or not that's going to be protests. But there's going to be chiefs of police from all over. But here we have a wonderful, wonderful token. A bright, shiny token by the name of Superintendent Eddie Johnson. He is the chief of police of Chicago Police Department. And this guy, if he ever loses his job, and he might lose his job because just a couple of days ago, he's under internal affairs investigation because he was found in his luxury SUV slumped over the steering wheel, passed out at a stoplight just a couple of days ago. And there's suspect that he was under some type of controlled substance or alcohol, and he was drunk driving and he passed out, and thankfully no one was injured. And he claims he's just exhausted from working so hard to protect black folks. He didn't say that. I'm ad-libbing a little bit here, but he was found passed out in his car. And he, as the superintendent of police, has opened up and is going to investigate himself. He opened up an internal affairs investigation on himself to find out just how innocent he is and write up a report on how innocent he is. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. I mean, this dude is getting like Trump. This is the man that when he was appointed, and the only reason he's in that job is because of massive black protests. And I forgive, people have to forgive me. I often say LaQuinn McDonald, but it's Laquan McDonald. After the cover-up of Laquan McDonald, black activists, grassroots activists in this city, kicked out the mayor, kicked out the state's attorney, and kicked out the chief of police. And now we got a black, and I ain't gonna call her a token because Kim Foxx is doing her thing. Vote for Kim Foxx. Go to KimFoxx.com. She's done more for the blacks than anybody. That's from Dolomite movie, Queen Bee. This woman has done more for the blacks than anyone. But anyway, vote for Kim Foxx. So we did get 1 out of 3. We got a black mayor, we got a black state's attorney in Chicago, and we got a black superintendent or chief of police. And that all was a byproduct of black uprising and protests. Now, the black state's attorney has made good on her political obligations. See, when someone goes into office, they have some debts. I believe that Kim Foxx has paid her political debts and has earned our votes. Now, Eddie Johnson, he's appointed to his position, but he only there as a result of us, has not made good. He hasn't even acknowledged his debt to the community. This man stood up and said, like I said, if he ever gets fired, if he ever, while he's investigating himself, if he finds himself unworthy to hold his position because he's out here drunk driving to the extent where he's passing out behind the wheel of a luxury SUV in the middle of the street, I mean, hold it together, Eddie. How you gonna run all these fascist cops in the fascist city and you can't even hold your liquor, homie? Or whatever you was snorting, sniffing, drinking. Anyway. If he ever gets fired, he can get a Netflix special because this dude is pure comedy. If you don't believe me, read some of the things he writes or states or go watch some of his video. This dude is comedy. If you know good comedy. When Eddie Johnson was first appointed by Mayor Rahm Emanuel to quell all the protests because of the persistent racism of the cops, and when there's one incident, I don't care if it's Mike Brown in Ferguson or Laquan McDonald here in Chicago, it's never that one incident. That's the straw that snapped the camel's vertebrae. That's just a fancy way. It's straw. So whenever you see black people uprising for quote unquote an incident, we never rebel based on incidents. Because if we rebelled based on incident, we wouldn't have time to do nothing else. To write raps, to chase basketballs, to hook our fades up, to get our nails did. If black people rebelled and rose up based on every racist incident, we would all die of dehydration and starvation because we wouldn't even have time to eat, drink, poop, or pee. Because there is perpetual, ongoing atrocities against black people all over this country every day, every waking moment. They commit atrocities against us while we're sleeping. And if they not in our face killing us, they putting lead in our water and other toxic chemicals in our environment. So we don't rebel based on an incident. But sometimes we will use an incident as to highlight or as a rally point or as a fulcrum to address the systemic issues. We ain't dumb. We're not revolutionary, but we're not dumb. Therefore, when Eddie Johnson was put in office as a result of a popular uprising in Chicago, he got up on the podium and said, I've been a policeman. He worked his way up through the ranks, bless his heart. He bootstrapped. He's a living embodiment of hustle, what do you say, the marathon, the hustle, what all this silly rhetoric y'all use about that trying to make integration seem cool again. He bootstrapped his way from a beat cop all the way up to the superintendent of the police. And this man said, I've been a cop for 31, 32 years, and I don't know what y'all niggas is talking about. I ain't seen no racism or brutality. Where? Where that at? Where they do that at? Don't believe me? Go listen to the man's inaugural speech. Rahm Emanuel's standing right there over his shoulder, patting him, rubbing his butt probably. We can't see, he's in front of a podium, but who knows? Who knows what they get up to? And so, then he said, oh, it's another funny thing he said. That made me laugh. I have to laugh to keep from crying. So much going on. People killing, people dying. But anyway, another thing he said was, the Jussie Smollett, he got a real hard on. This dude wants to give Jussie Smollett the shaft. He wants to ramrod and railroad Jussie Smollett. He has got a hard on for Jussie Smollett. It's funny how homoerotic a lot of that type of law enforcement talk is. But anyway, he really wants to get Jussie Smollett. He hates Black Eddie Johnson. And so he got up and said at when the charges were dropped, that Eddie Johnson said, we have over 70% of the murders in Chicago gone solved, and we committed all these resources to finding the men who committed the hate crime against Jussie Smollett, and Jussie Smollett lied. And I just really hate that so many resources, and he blamed Jussie Smollett for the amount of resources that the Chicago Police Department put in to investigate his crime. They said there were over a dozen detectives assigned to this case. When black people are robbed, assaulted, and murdered in Chicago, and there might be one detective working a dozen cases, where you have a dozen homicides, robberies, and murders, and then you got a dozen detectives working one case. And he said he was outraged by that. But guess who sets the priorities and assignments? The reason there were a dozen people working that one case is because Eddie Johnson himself allowed it to happen. He's the one that did it. He was the one that sets the priorities, the policies, and oversees the overseers. He's the HNIC. And for you black people whose parents worked hard and get them in an affluent world and y'all weren't around your people that much, HNIC means he's the head nigga in charge. So he's blaming Jussie Smollett for something he had full power to control. So that dude's funny. He's funny as hell. Anyway, that's not even what I'm talking about. I just gotta let y'all know who Eddie Johnson, the top cop in Chicago. And like I said, we got 3 black people in the highest political positions. Kim Fox says Eddie Johnson, and Corey, Lori Lightfoot on our neck. Now, Lori Lightfoot ain't making good on her political debts, and Eddie Johnson ain't even acknowledging, let alone making good on his political debts. But anyway, Eddie Johnson said he's going to go to the International Association of Chiefs of Police in Chicago, but he will not be attending because the keynote speaker for that event, which I think is wholly appropriate, is Donald J. Trump, President Trump. Trump is coming here to speak to the police chiefs. And who better to speak to a bunch of fascists than the top fascists in the country? So he's coming here to speak to them. And Eddie Johnson said, I will not be attending that speech. He ain't going. And the reason he said he's not going is because he doesn't like how Chicago is represented. He said that Donald Trump does not represent the values of Chicago. And if I was Trump representative, Trump put me on the payroll because I could represent you, Trump. Break me off some of that money you stealing from the government in your kleptocracy. Because let me tell you something. Chicago represents the values of Trump. Racism, discrimination, elitism, kleptocracy, corruption, cronyism. Eddie Johnson is a funny dude. Because how dare he say that Chicago doesn't represent the Trump's values, and Trump doesn't represent the values of Chicago. The only thing I'd probably say, there's only one divergence between Chicago and Trump, but we can get into that because he said he misrepresents the crimes of Chicago because Trump likes to go around is because Chicago is a Democratic controlled city. What is going on? Oh wow, why do I have to put the volume? Sorry. Chicago is a Democratic controlled city. And so he's like, well, when the Democrats take over a city, it's economically it's backwards. As far as crime, the blacks, they don't keep the blacks under control. They like to think northern whites don't know how to control blacks. You need southern whites keep the blacks in check. So you got black people rising and marching and rioting all over these cities because we're too uppity. So anyway, those are the two reasons. He said he doesn't like, and the fact that Chicago is a sanctuary city. And Trump and his administration attempted to, but it's unconstitutional, but they attempted to deny federal funds. They attempted to deny federal funds to sanctuary cities. And Chicago has been a sanctuary city since, who did that? I think it was Mayor Harold Washington was the one who first set the mandate that local authorities should not cooperate with federal authorities in immigration enforcement. Now, that's another thing with the hypocrisy of the right. The right wingers, the racist, say they care about states' rights and state sovereignty, and they always talk about federal overreach. The federal government's trying to come in and take our rights, and we got to have states' rights. So when it comes to things like racial discrimination or denying abortion rights or not letting trans people use whatever freaking bathroom they want to use, they want the states to be able to legally discriminate against citizens. But when it comes to policies that give more leeway for people, oppressed people, then they want a strong federal government. So, on the West Coast, you got Bundy, who's a conservative hero, fighting against the federal government, coming into the states to tell the states what they can and can't do. But then here on the East Coast, they applauding the federal government coming in, crushing the will of the people in the states. Because they're liars. Fascists are liars. You won't find one fascist movement that isn't led by and full of pathological, unrelenting contradictions and lies. But anyway, Eddie Johnson is full of cow dung. He's full of crap. He's full of BS. Eddie Johnson don't care nothing about misrepresentation of crime. Eddie Johnson doesn't care anything about Trump being anti-sanctuary city. Eddie Johnson knows damn well, he knows better than me, that Trump does embody the values of Chicago. Because the Democrats of Chicago have demonstrated the same level of racism and corruption as the Republicans in Washington, D.C. The reason Eddie Johnson is not attending that meeting is because of his own Sambo ego. Trump came here a little while ago, and Trump had a Chicago Police Department escort. And like I said, Eddie Johnson is still black, even though he's the superintendent of the police, and the Chicago Police Department and Fraternal Order of Police is still racist. So even though they have a black leader who is fully committed to advancing the interests of the Chicago Police Department and the Fraternal Order of Police, he's still black. And just like when Obama took over the country and was advancing U.S. imperialism and coddled, if not bowed down to, white aggressors, white domination, they still hate him. Dale Jones said, we could be fighting for them and they hate us. We could be dying for them and they hate us. There's an old story of the frog and the scorpion. And the scorpion said, can you get me across the flooded waters? And he said, no, because you're going to sting me. And the scorpion said, why would I sting you? I got to play that. I'm going to play that by Oscar Grant because I know I'm messing it up. I'll play it. If not today, tomorrow. And he said, why would I sting you? I'll die too. So he's like, yeah, that makes sense. So he let the scorpion hop on his back. And he swam across. And halfway through, the scorpion stung him. And the toad said, man, now we're both going to drown. He's like, look, I'm a scorpion. I do scorpion things. So even though it's a black man in a high position selling out black people and serving white folks, the white folks are still going to hate him. So when Donald Trump came, and of course, most of the cops in Chicago are right-wing, are pro-Republican, fascists, if not neo-Nazis. Now, they were buddying up with Trump. And they were talking dirt about Eddie Johnson. And they told Donald Trump, if we were allowed to really do our jobs, we could end crime in Chicago in 24 hours or 48 hours. We could end all crime in Chicago. And so they were buddying up and rubbing elbows with Trump when his personal motorcade and escort were buddying up with Trump, talking dirt and being racist against Eddie Johnson. Now, Eddie Johnson is like, be racist, systematically racist, but don't be personally racist, because that hurts my feelings. And you know Trump, he ain't loyal. Trump got on the media and told his subordinates what the Chicago PD told. And then this story popped up in Fox News and started Sean Hannity. And all people were talking about, oh, the police in Chicago don't like the leadership. The police in Chicago are they're restrained from being able to do what they need to do. The crime, and just like, remember when Trump was running for office and he was like, he was going to do away with ISIS in 3 months. And these white people think they can come and police our communities and bring the hammer down and end crime and violence in Chicago in 48 hours. How do they end crime and violence in Chicago? By employing criminal violence in Chicago. But I digress. And so that's why Eddie Johnson ain't got nothing to do with Chicago. It surely ain't got nothing to do with his solidarity with black people, because Trump is an overt racist. He's not going to see Trump because of his own little hissy fit. Because his own officers don't respect him, disrespected him on a global stage, and he was like a fool to go sit in front of Trump. And he's also afraid Trump might point him out and call him out in front of everybody. Trump still might call him out anyway, because he's scared. He can use his army of cops to bring down fascist repression in the black community, but he's scared of white folks. But I ain't mad at him. You don't get to Obama status. You don't get to be superintendent over a racist police force. You don't become CEO of a racist corporation. You don't get to sit across from the chairman of the NFL and make billion-dollar deals if you're not subservient to white folks. You don't become a billionaire media mogul, Oprah Winfrey, without massaging the ego of white folks. That's the key to wealth. It's not being the most skilled Negro. It's not being the hardest working Negro. It's not being the smartest Negro. It's being the Negro that can make white folks feel the most comfortable with your presence and trust you with power and resources. Just like it was, as it was on the plantation, so it shall it be in the modern America. So watch this story. Like I said, Eddie Johnson is entertaining, tragically sad clown entertaining to me. But they're going to try to slide this. Don't let them tell you. My only problem with this is they're going to try to act like Eddie Johnson, Superintendent Eddie Johnson, Eddie, is doing something for the people of Chicago. It's standing for the people of Chicago. It's standing against racism. It's standing against fascists, when he won't even acknowledge the racism and the fascism in the Chicago Police Department. Don't let them do it. Now, let me tell you, y'all don't believe they got a hard on. And one more thing, the judge just approved. The city of Chicago is going to sue Jesse Smollett for the $130,000 in man hours that were expended on his case. They want him to repay. Now, what pissed me off about this? They said that Jesse Smollett owes $130,106 to the city of Chicago because he filed a false police report, and that all of the man hours of the dozen detectives. Now, if your loved one could get killed tomorrow in the city of Chicago, and you'd be lucky to get a business card from a detective, let alone to be able to sit or watch or hope that dozens of detectives will be out trying to find whoever murdered your loved one. But they said they want Jesse Smollett to pay $130,106 back to the city of Chicago. Now, the city of Chicago says they want to recuperate this funds, but they've already gone to court at least half a dozen times to get the case to be brought to trial. Jesse is fighting it, so it's going to go to trial. So the city of Chicago is going to spend at least $1 million in attorney fees, court fees, for judge, and all the other displaced cases and time that it's going to take to run this through in this litigation. They're going to spend, now let me be more conservative, they're going to spend at least $250,000 to secure this $130,000. And that's what Eddie Johnson wants to do to save us money. But I could tell Eddie Johnson, if you in the Chicago Tribune, they said in 2018, the city of Chicago, the tax-paying citizens of Chicago, had to pay out $113 million to settle police misconduct and police brutality claims. $113 million freaking dollars. Between 2010 and 2018, the citizens of Chicago have had to pay $500 million, $500 million, which would cover the deficit, the pension deficit, because of police brutality and police misconduct claims. So Eddie, if you want to save us money, you can stop with your obsession, your homoerotic obsession with Jesse Smollett, and corral your police to get them to stop engaging in corruption and crime. And yes, that $130,000 is only 0.9% of the money that the police cost us. So you're going to waste time getting that 0.9% of the overall loss of that we have from the police, or you're going to try to make sure we don't net this year. I don't know. They don't have the 2019 figures. But last year, we have to pay $113 million for the cops. That money comes out of the money that could go into our schools, repairing roads, getting these lead pipes from underground all over Chicago, mainly Southside Black Chicago, but I digress. So Eddie Johnson is funny, man. This dude is crazy. He should be ashamed of himself, but the bugger got no shame. You know, sellouts ain't got no shame. Uncle Tom's ain't never had no shame out there bucking and tap dance. One of these days, I'm going to talk about forgiveness. And I did want to talk about this positive attitude and bright-sided. Do we have time for that? Maybe we'll come back to that. I also wanted to talk about neo-imperialism. Gosh, I got to maybe I'll keep my notes down to 2 or 3 pages. But I was accused of not being on topic and staying on topic. That's a very hurtful accusation. It's accurate, but accurate accusations and critiques tend to be hurtful. Just because it is accurate don't mean it's not hurtful. So I'm going to try to get on topic. Today's show is entitled, I forget the show titles. No, it's PickMes, Simps, and Occult Anti-Blackness. If you listen to yesterday's show, not yesterday, like I said, when I leave the Bro Diallo show, I climb in a box and lay in a fetal position until the next Bro Diallo show airs. So when I say tomorrow, it's tomorrow for me, because yesterday never existed to me. So Monday to Wednesday, I skip over Tuesday because I'm just in a box, curled up in a fetal position. That's how miserable the world got me. But anyway, so Monday, not yesterday, day 4 yesterday. Monday, I explained what occult means. And I'm not going to get into it again. You should subscribe to the Bro Diallo show. Go to the Bro Diallo show website. Be a Patreon of the Bro Diallo show. You should. It's all so many good things you can do to help support the Bro Diallo. Subscribe to the YouTube. Become a Patreon. Tune in. I didn't do none of that. Before I do that, this is Bro Diallo show, Q4 Radio, City of Chirac, State of Illinois, United States of America. You can listen to us at www.q4.org, the TuneIn app, iTunes Radio. Download those apps and go to QUE number 4 Radio and AM 1680. And I was told yesterday, John told me yesterday, that it's no longer Q4 Radio, it's Q4 Media. Because it's going to be TV, online video channel, studio, print, art, event space, and a radio station. So it's going from, we're going to be like the anti-Fox News, the anti-corporate media conglomerate. If there is such a thing, that's what this will be. Anyway, and I'm glad to be a part of it. So I'm still going to say Q4 Radio because I'm an old man and I'm just afraid of change. So I will still say Q4 Radio, but it is actually Q4 Media Conglomerate. Anyway, so you can listen to AM 1680 if you are unfortunate enough, like myself, to live in the city of Chirac, state of Illinois. So, now that that's out of the way. I was supposed to do that at the top of the hour, but we're at the top of a new hour, so I did it. Station identification, so the FCC will know who to find and where to find us. Now, day before yesterday, I said occult means hidden, and a lot of anti-blackness is now hidden. Most people harbor anti-black sentiments or anti-points of views, and it's not even conscious, it's not deliberate. But when you live in a society that is saturated with racism, sexism, patriarchy, and all sorts of other negative isms, individualism, narcissism, it bleeds into all people's behaviors. And that's what they're teaching about the concept of toxic masculinity as they're understanding. A lot of men say, well, I'm not toxic. But what they're finding is there's very few men who are universally and persistently toxic. They find that even the most noble men, even the men who consciously and deliberately attempt to shun all aspects and components of toxic masculinity, will engage in toxic behaviors or hold toxic positions or help to prop up toxic masculine environments or statuses or conditions or industries. And so you can be a good person and engage in bad, because, as they say, we're all flawed, nobody's perfect, this and that. I don't even think we should strive for perfection. But we should at least understand, we should strive for balance. And we should strive to be the best that we can be. And I don't want to sound like the end credits of a G.I. Joe cartoon, but we should. Knowing is half the battle. So if we understand or have a more in-depth understanding of these negativities, I think we're more apt to be more humane. And as we are more humane, we have a potential to be more revolutionary. So that's why we do this. So, and shout out to the teachers union and the teacher strike. And a lesser shout out to the auto workers that are on strike. I support unions. I support strikes. I think that all citizens of the United States should have a general strike. So, I continue to digress. Now, Simps, PickMes, and Occult Anti-Blackism. If you look, I have to keep saying this because I keep going off track. If you look at Monday shows, I explain what occultism is. Do I have to explain what anti-Blackism is? I'm going to assume that I don't have to explain what anti-Blackism is, because Dr. Bobby E. Wright said that anti-Blackism is the world's only universal ideology, meaning that you can find diverse populations. You can find right-wing Christian America or left-wing secular Venezuela or ultra-right-wing theocratic Iran or Afghanistan. And you will find all these various cultures with various ethnicities and even various racial identities. And one thing you will find that saturates all these cultures is anti-Blackism. A brother from Nigeria just tuned in because he listened to me describe anti-Blackism, and he tunes in and said, please, Do not exclude Africa. When you're talking about the universality of anti-Blackism, you cannot leave out the African continent, because many, if not most, African nations are as deeply anti-Black as Western nations. The Luos don't like the Kikuyus. The Hutus don't like the Tutsis. The South Africans don't like the Nigerians or the Zimbabweans. The collective of Africans have animosity towards the African diaspora, Black Americans. What they call Akata. The Caribbeans, Black Americans don't like the West Indians. The West Indians don't like the Black Americans. No matter how diverse, no matter how widespread a population is, anti-Blackness is the world's only universal ideology. Bobby E. Wright stated that in 1984? And I'm still waiting to find evidence to the contrary. This hypothesis, this theory has been tested. It is demonstrated, observed, and confirmed. Can you find a corner of this planet? Can you find a nation, a people, a culture that has not saturated with anti-Blackness? And so I could talk about anti-Blackness as it manifests anywhere, in education, in the labor market. Even though I support labor unions are racist AF. But the particular manifestations of anti-Blackness that disturb me the most are the anti-Blackness that emerge within our intimate relationships. In our most intimate relationships. And this will be heterocentric because I'm a heterosexual cisgender Black man. I suspect this also applies in non-heterosexual relationships, and maybe I'll get someone in here to talk about it sooner than later. But I'm hearing people scared to come on the Bro Diallo show. I don't know why. I'm the nicest freaking guy. But anyway. Within our intimate relationships, there is a significant amount of occult. You have Black men and women that say, I only date within my race. I don't date outside my race because I love my people. And it's great. It's a great idea. A lot of it seems like surface rhetoric, but even as surface rhetoric, I prefer that surface rhetoric to any other type of surface rhetoric. If that's the best we can do, it's the best we can do. But we have this concept of PickMes and Simps that I find more so spread around Black people who are conscious, cultural, African-centered, woke AF, and all of those other terms we have for Black people who seek to make a positive contribution to the just aspirations of our people. The people who would not define themselves as materialistic, individualistic, or Eurocentric. Now, as a pick-me, we'll start off with talking about Well, I'll just tell the truth. I made a statement on social media that people were just coming at me left, right, and center. And the statement was that a pick-me is infunctional because you have different definitions. And what I choose to go off are functional definitions. Definitions that apply to how we use the word in common language and function. And then you have the formal definition. But I believe before you can go off to the functional definition, you have to grasp the formal definition. But anyway, because pick-me is considered a slang term or a street term, it's not really a formal word, you only have the functional definition. So I looked up on Urban Dictionary, and it says pick-me, a person who begs for the attention, acceptance, and approval of a certain group in different things they say. In most cases, it is to attain the attention, acceptance, and approval of the opposite sex. And two is someone who enjoys and finds empowerment in doing things that make their significant other happy. Now, just call me old fashioned, call me problematic, but I don't have an issue with people doing that. I don't have an issue with doing that. Now, the word begs has different connotations. You have literal begging. You know, I beg my wife for stuff. Or she would say nag her for stuff. Like if I want to, oh, come on, can we do this? Or we dispute. We go back and forth. There's a term like beg the question. So it's not literally begging. It's advocating. It's pushing. It's trying to sway the other person. And you can say it was begging. When the first time I met my wife, it was at the Brooklyn Moon Cafe. It was a poetry reading. And we had a really good conversation. And then at the end of the evening, she kind of left. And I was trying to take it slow and be smooth and be a smooth operator. I didn't want to be pushy. I had fully ended to try to get her number and everything, but she left. And I'm looking through the crowd because, you know, everybody after the poetry reading is kind of congregating, saying hello. I was greeting various people I knew. Other people were coming up complimenting me on my little recital of my poem that I did. And so I was, you know, accepting the praise and input from the people. And then I look around, she's gone. And I'm like, damn. Now, I never go back. That was just a thing. I had sat at home and I wrote this poem and I wanted to go recite it at Brooklyn Moon. That's the only reason I showed up. I didn't go there. That wasn't a regular spot for me. It's probably a year I hadn't gone to that spot. And if not for meeting Dr. Mingo that night, I wouldn't have probably gone back for another year. But I went back the very next week because I'm like, I know her name. I know how she looked. I don't know her last name, but I know she when we were talking, she's into theater and the arts, and she's into literature and poetry. So my best chance of trying to find this chick is to go back the next week. And I had a homeboy. We had some work to do in Jersey City. And he was coming to New York on a Friday to pick me up, and we were going to ride back to Jersey to do this work. Oh, and shout out. What's up, man? I haven't spoke to him in quite some time now that I think about it. Jamal, what's up, Jamal? But anyway, so Jamal comes to town. It's like, yo, you ready to pack up and bounce? And I'm like, yeah, but I just want to swing by this spot before we leave. And it's late in the evening. He's like, are you serious? I'm like, it won't take a minute. So we go in and I paid $5 and I'm not even planning on staying. I'm standing by the door. Anyway, she comes in with a date. Well, it wasn't a date. It was a male coworker that had said, hey, you want to go out? And she's like, well, I go to this poetry recital thing, so you can come that. But looked like a date to me. And I'm like, damn, played myself. Should have locked it in last week. Anyway, dude gets up and leaves. And so when he leaves, I come and sit next to her and I'm like, hey, you know, remember me? And I'm like, that dude, y'all on the date? She's like, oh, we work together and we not, no, don't get it twisted. So I'm like, oh, word, so let's, you know, get them 7 digits, you know, and all that. But I'm just saying, that could be interpreted. Was it stalking? Was it begging? Was it being thirsty? Because I didn't know her. Yeah, we've been married 20 years now, almost. It'll be 20 years next year. Well, we haven't been married. We've been together for 20 years next year. I met her in the year 2000. So, is that, now you could call that a lot of things. I guess if it hadn't worked out, if I had sat next to her and she was like, ugh, you're that guy from last week. What are you doing here? Get away from me. Then it could be stalking. But because she was also interested, she gave me her number. We talked. We did some things. And then, you know, she immaculately conceived a child because we're pure people. We don't do bad things. You know, and we got 2 kids and 20 years in the game. Now, so when you use words like beg for attention, was I begging for attention? I definitely wanted her attention. I definitely went beyond what I would normally do, because when you're trying to do something new or achieve something, You have to go beyond what you would normally do. You can't just do what you always do and expect to be the same thing. And I didn't know it'd be 20 years together. You know, I was trying to get maybe a good weekend, a couple of weekends, but it kept going, and you know how this courtship and relationships do. So when they say a person who begs for attention and acceptance and approval, what's that begging? So in that context, in the context of relationships, when you're trying to create an intimate bond or trying to lay the foundations for a relationship, we all play ourselves. We all make ourselves vulnerable. We all do things that we normally would not do. So the pick me definition, even in this unfavorable definition, I'm like, why all the hostility? So then I went to several websites and I just found one that was most popular, as to what's wrong with pick-me's, why pick-me's suck. And so the Madame Noir website has this thing, it's like, why pick-me's suck? 3 reasons. One of the reasons is they encourage ridiculous expectations. A pick-me never requires much of a man before she places him on a pedestal. As such, all a guy needs to do is just show a little bit of attention and be crowned king in her eyes. There are enough women doing this that some men genuinely expect the same type of treatment from every woman that they are interested in. Now, I have never experienced this. But I'm old. I don't know what young folks are doing today. But isn't that not a subjective position? Some things that other people think are praiseworthy, some women think, oh, wow, that's really exceptional. Other women be like, that don't do nothing for me. I don't care nothing about that. Like, my wife is really into like small gestures, like holding doors and, opening doors and holding them. And that's a very minor thing. It ain't even a heavy door. Sometimes it's an electronic door. I just have to step on the pad and step aside and let her go through. She appreciates those things. And I don't know about putting on a pedestal. What does that even mean? Because also when you're in an intimate relationship, the pedal position comes with the trap door on it. So as easy as for you to get up on that pedestal, she'll push a button to drop you through it. Oh, you're so wonderful. Well, yeah, what's wrong with you? So there's never a case of constant praise or constant tear down. There's always an ebb and flow. There's a balance. So you might go see a woman on social media that's like, oh, my man is the greatest. And they go online to share their good things. Like everybody does on social media. When something is wonderful, you share it. But you don't go on there and say, he was cutting his toenails last night and that big crusty toenail popped right into my eye. Then he rolled over past gas and fell asleep. I hate that nigga. She's not going to share that as her status. But 2 days later, he brings her some flowers and she's like, he's my king. It seems like ridiculous expectations. I have ridiculous expectations. Everybody has, and that's what life does. What happens is, as you're interacting and playing back and forth, your expectation, before I was ever in a serious relationship, the things that I thought a woman should do for me and the things I imagined I would do for a woman, none of that's real life. When you graduate high school and go to college, the way you expect, you got ridiculous expectations on how school is going to be. And what you're going to do when I go to college, I'm going to do this. I'm going to study hard every night and I'm going to party hard every day. And then when you get to college and you're in that musty ass dorm room in that mildewy ass shower, it's like, this is nothing like this ain't Hillman. Where's Lisa Bonet? Where's my cheerful little white sidekick? We all have ridiculous expectations. And then sometimes we still try to strive for those ridiculous expectations. And when we fall short. So again, I'm like, what's the big deal? But what am I missing here? And then they say they are the female equivalent of the quote unquote trademark good guy. So basically, PickMes behave like men. Okay, it says, when we're young, we're told that guys only want a good girl. Only a good girl is worthy and deserving of her Prince Charming and live happily ever after. To be considered a good girl, we have to sit quietly, smile at everything, and look perfect. Being fed this line of logic does a couple of things. First, it tells girls that her life doesn't actually begin until she finds her man. Second, it tells her that her behavior is enough to earn her a man. Third, it recenters a girl's focus on men, stunting her opportunity to focus on her own identity. Pick-me's continue to parrot the idea that being a good girl makes her superior dating choice long into her adulthood, depending on their success in love. Their experience can either confirm or confound that concept. In case that it is not increasing the amount of quality of her romantic options, she may start complaining that guys don't want a good girl. But it was stated in the op-ed about good guys need to step up their game. But as it was stated, simply being good is not enough to attract a mate. That sounds like a personal problem. Or as that fascist idiot, pathological liar Ben Shapiro likes to say, that sounds like a you problem. Why would I be mad? Because someone, by this definition, is indoctrinated to think something that is wholly inaccurate and then acts on that inaccurate information. What that got to do with you? Now, what I find is, I know a lot of people, now that I'm older, now that I'm in my mid-40s, most of my friends are settled. Some are settled, some have settled. There's a difference between being settled and settling, have settled. Now, most of them have been in long-term relationships. And even if they're not in long-term relationships, they're in relationships with other well-seasoned adults. And let me tell you, there is great diversity between intimate relationships. And there are some men that like a woman that can throw on some 6-inch heels and a 2-inch skirt and rip up the dance floor. There are other men that wants his woman in sweatpants and a tattered sweater on the couch watching Netflix, eating buffalo wings. There are different people that want different things. Different people are attracted to different things. And so if somebody really has in their mind that they want to be the good girl, they want to be, want to live that archetype, wants to fill that role, and they have varying levels of success. And there are men that are attracted to chaste and righteous woman of God. And there are men, she will find men that will praise her for that, and you will find men that will shun her for that. That is, again, doesn't seem like anything that warrants the hostility of pick-me's. And yeah, I know the good guys are annoying and the good girls are annoying. But thankfully, we have the right to say, look, step off. I know a lot of dudes. I had a friend. We're not friends currently. But he used to always say that he was an introvert. And he was quiet and his demeanor. And we were outlandish dudes, like I had one homie that was a hip hop dancer and an outgoing dude, another dude that was a rapper. I used to do theater and I used to be into debate. It was my whole crew was like a lot of dudes that were really into like public performing, public speaking, and things of that nature. But we had one cat in our crew that was a low-key dude. And he didn't get much attention. We go out and hang together and we all come home and girls and interacting with the sisters in the streets, and he'd be like, nobody pays attention to me. And he was that typical nice guy. He was really a sociopath, but that's another story. The main thing is, he thought because he was low-key and quiet that he should be appreciated for that. The fact that he's not trying to make us be seen or known, and the fact that women should see his invisibility. I don't know what it's all. I understand the good guy's an ass. But for the most part, he was in a miserable box. He didn't really obstruct our flow. And guess what? He did eventually find other girls. There was this girl he dated for a long time that was raised as a Muslim. And she was raised to be chaste and modest. but she didn't want to stay in the music in the Islamic community. She didn't because her father was so overbearing, but she was used to being very low-key, meek, and chaste. Even though she left Islam, she carried a lot of the Muslim girl training with her. And they dated, and they were very happy because they were two quiet, mousy, low-key people together, and they found a hole to crawl into for many happy, blissful years together. So, but should I get mad? You know, my wife was a model and a performer and a debater, and she does lectures. She's another extroverted person like I am. She likes companies and dinner parties and all that mess. She was in the club, bottles full of blood, you know. So I don't get mad at introverted people. I don't get mad at the good guy or the good girl. You know, I'm the bad guy. I don't understand why that's a point of contingency. Even if people say, well, I'm the good guy and I think other people should be like me. Hey, I'm a vegan. I think everybody should be a vegan like me. And every opportunity I get to advocate for veganism, I do it. That's what people do when they believe in something, when they embody something. Okay, the third reason. They shame other women for having lives. Now, this seems like a pretty fallacious statement. But they say, let a pick me tell it, a woman should be sitting at home doing absolutely nothing with her with her life until some man or any man steps up to her porch. The problem is that many women don't want to live that way. More and more modern women are wanting to explore their dating options and the world. Girls are out here living their best lives and making no apologies for it. However, pick-me's always try to mess up the vibe by claiming that all of their living is hurting their chances of ever being considered marriage material. The flaw in the logic is that some women are no longer concerned about that. Worse than that is that a pick-me's motivation for shaming other women, men, they shame other women on behalf of men. Everything they do is centered around catching a man. If that requires them to throw other women under the bus, they don't seem to have a problem doing that. And in this time when when women need to stick together more than ever, ain't nobody got time for that. Now, I see some women are called pick me. Now, I see this contradicting because there was just a woman who said that she has 2 children and she refuses to put the father of her daughters on child support. She took him off, says she doesn't want to hamper him. And she got her own money, she got her own car, I love how they say car instead of car. They say she got her own car, she got her own, pay her own bills. And she worked, and she ain't scared to work hard. And she's a pick-me, even though she's not sitting at home. She's doing exactly the opposite. And I've seen career ambitious women called pick-me's, and I've seen women who believe that they should be taken care of called pick-me's. So, I mean, this seems fallacious. But it seems like what I've said, because there are so many contradictory, like now I could lead a whole nother list about pick-me's. And as far as women shaming other women, this article is shaming pick-me's. And pick-me's are women. So yes, women shame other women. Women criticize other women. Men criticize other men. There are whole programs of men sitting around talking about hip-hop, athletes, pants sagging. People criticize other people. And so I try to understand what is this pick-me phenomenon, because they're trying to act like these pick-me's are engaged in a behavior that is so alien, so foreign. And I came to the conclusion that it's an anti-black undertone to pick-me, this pick-me tone, because basically the anti-pick-me's are consciously or subconsciously asserting that black men are not worth any effort to win their affection. So whether you are engaged in positive things like dressing yourself up, going to places, or engaging or taking on interest. When I met my wife, one of the first things she started playing video games for the first time in her life. She and I would sit and play Dynasty Warriors together on my Xbox. And she never liked video games, but I liked video games. So we played boo, 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 boo. After a while, After a few months into the relationship, she was like, I tried it because you liked it, and I really was curious to know you and know why you liked it, and I still didn't understand it. I mean, it was fun for a minute, but I don't like video games. And it's like simulated violence. I ain't with that. I don't even know why you like it. And she stopped playing with me. Now she'll play Monopoly on, like, digital Monopoly. And there's this other game she'll play, Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time. If you have a woman that doesn't like video games and criticizes you and hurts your spirit and soul and tears you down because you like video games, download Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time. And it's a game where people are, it's literally a game where like miniature bunny rabbits are going out to secure love, to save love, to bring love to the universe. She likes that game. So just a little advice. She loves that game. She asks me to play it all the time. You want to play Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time? Now I get to tell her, I ain't got time for these video games. Our people are suffering. Now I get to flip it on her like she does me. But anyway, I concluded that, like the concept of simp, any black woman that desires the affection and attention and company of a black man and desires it to the extent that she's willing to make any adjustments or put forth any real effort to secure that attention is a pick-me. And when I posted this, like, even though there's all these diverse things about people are saying about pick-me, that seems to be the that black men ain't worth the effort. That's the bottom line. And if you put forth the effort for black men that ain't worth the effort, then you are a pick-me. And I got a backlash. Because I got a lot of smart women that follow me, that engage with me on social media. And they came and I heard all this stuff like, no, a pick-me is a woman who sets other women up for rape. A pick-me is a woman who tears down other women in order to seem attracted to men. And I can tell you something about men. Men don't, you're not going to impress men by tearing down other women. You do better to build yourself up. Now, you can impress a sexist by agreeing with his tear down, but it's just, I don't see it that way. Now, the internet is a lot different. We all present different on the internet than we do in the flesh. No, that's not really true. There's some people I've met through the internet, and when I meet them person to person, or just media in general, some people live up to their media persona, some don't. Like Wise Intelligent. They say don't meet your heroes. I had listened to Wise Intelligent, and I'm going off, but I listened to Wise Intelligent, Poor Righteous Teachers, since I was a kid. Had posters of Poor Righteous Teachers on my wall. And about a decade ago, maybe 7, 8 years ago, I had a chance to meet him face to face. And I've communicated, and we've interacted together, and the times he's been in town. And he's actually lived up, like he really is like the dude he was in the music. Whereas other people, and I don't want to name names, that you'll hear them rap one thing on vinyl or on the CD or on the MP3s, and then you interact with them face to face like, dude, you perpetrating a fraud. And I don't care. I'm glad that gangster rappers are not real gangsters. I don't think gangsterism is good for our community. But when you're rapping pro-black and you making money by, talking about RBG, it's a little disappointing. But I'm an adult now, so I don't weep and wail and cry into my pillow when one of the people, men or women that I look up to, don't live up to their persona. But anyway, I digress. They came and told me all these definitions of pick-me. No, a pick-me is only a woman who tears down other women to secure the affection of men. But if you're trying to secure the affection of men and you're not tearing down other women to do so, more power to you. And then, but the same women that tried to argue with me that my conclusion that pick-me is basically has black undertones because it's pretty much mocking or demeaning women who desire the affection of black men, because I don't really hear that used outside of the black community. When a white woman displays some of these same attributes, she's called a hopeless romantic, she's called lovesick, she's called a girly girl or whatever, but they don't use such a derogatory thing, because pick-me also really bothers me because how it relates to the slave legacy, the auction block. Black women on display and available. Like when R. Kelly said, you remind me of my Jeep. Objectification. But okay. And I'm like, oh, so that's what pick-me is. And they're like, yeah, you don't understand. It's only these wretched women who set other women up for rape. who demean and undermine other women to gain the affection of a black man. And I know a lot of brothers that either are married or long-term relationship, and there's no man that was like, hey, how'd you meet your wife? Oh, I just saw her tearing down other black women, and I just knew that was the woman for me. And one thing I know about tear-downers, being a tear-downer myself, tear-downers tend to be equal opportunity tear-downs. Even those horrendous women who have internalized patriarchy, who hate other women, they're just as harsh on men. Like that El Raicho, that wife class stuff. If you read her stuff, she attacks men because they have a concept of what every woman that has a strict concept, a warped concept of what a real woman is. Believe you me, they got a concept of what a real man is too. So it's not gender exclusive, but let's say that's the case. So then after everyone comes and explains to me that I've got this pick me thing all wrong and it's only about black women who attack other black women, I see this meme that goes viral. Millions of people share it. It popped up in my timeline several times a day for several weeks. It went viral. Of this black woman who was in a bridesmaid's dress, and she's doing a 40-foot vertical leap to grab the bouquet. Because you know when they throw the bouquet, the woman who catches it gets married. And when I went, because I had a I don't have a holy matrimony. I have a civic matrimony. My wife and I got married at City Hall. It was no church. She's an agnostic and I'm an atheist. So we didn't have. But I went to my brother's wedding and he had a traditional wedding in the church. And they throw the garter belt or the thing around the woman's side. They throw that for the men. And they throw the woman's flowers for the women. And the man to catch it. So when they threw it for the men, my brother's friend that he used to play basketball in college with, he caught it and the men kind of shrugged and we went and sat down. But then when they got the woman's flower thing, the women were like in the 3-point stands, ready, brass knuckles and baseball bats. They really wanted that bouquet. That was just the thing that women are into. Just like, men are into other dumb, pointless things. But there was a woman doing a 40-foot vertical leap to capture the bouquet. And there was no other story behind it. It was just a woman who really fought. And every time I've gone to a wedding, I also went to my cousin Eric. What's up, Eric? I went to his wedding. Same thing. The men were were not as enthusiastic about the things. We're just there. In fact, even when I get an invite or my wife gets an invite to a wedding, my wife is the only reason I go. Oh, you need to go. Your nephew's getting married. You need to go. So when I went to my brother's wedding, she was my girlfriend at the time. She said, you're not going to your brother's wedding. You got to go. So whenever I go to weddings, I don't even like weddings. And all the other dudes are there because there's some woman, I know stereotypical, but because there's somebody there making us go. Weddings just ain't our thing. But it's something we do because we want to get picked. We want to maintain the affection of women and our connection to the women in our lives. So we do the things that they like, even though we don't really want to do it. That's just relationships. That's not being a pick me. But anyway, women and the weddings I've been to have always been really, really on. And then, even the girls that didn't want to get up there to catch the bouquet, that's like, just get in the huddle. You ain't got to catch it. Just get up there. So all I'm saying is, this woman was called the queen of pick-me's and she was mocked and, again, she was shamed. And they were making all these assumptions about her. Oh, she's a pick-me. Oh, she really wants to be chosen. Oh, she's really degrading herself. She was just having a good time. I don't know if the girl who caught the one at my brother's wedding, it's just a saying. It's an event. It's just something that happens that the women enjoy. So women just living her best life and doing her best vertical leap. So I'm like, what happened to this strict definition of pick-meism? Because what could be assumed about this image of this woman doing this vertical leap is that she wants to be married, that she's single, really wants to be married, and she might have some real belief in the myth that whoever catches this is the next to be married. And she really wants to be married. And you don't even know if she's heterosexual. Nowadays, she could have been wanting to be married to a woman. So I know that when you call these anti-pick-me people on their, wait, this anti-pick-me stuff, it doesn't really seem constructive or even a legitimate criticism. It's like, what I find is what unites all pick-me's are generally black women who seek and willing to work for the affection. But guess what? You got to work for affection. Hell, I have to work for the respect of my sons. I have to work for the affection of my dog. To maintain relationships and connection requires work. And yes, everybody criticizes everything. I see, and I don't really see women who are into this swirling thing and that are recording, like, that are into swirling or into being sugar babies and any of that. I never see the pick me labels put on that. I just saw this another viral post where this woman took a picture with this younger look appearing white woman, black woman, but she could be 85. But she looked to be in her 20s, and this older appearing white man who looked to be in his 50s, but he could be 12 because you know how we age. But she was on there saying, hey, you hoes ain't in the game right. You hoes ain't doing it right. Now I'm doing things, you know, I get money. I'm a sugar baby and I got a sugar daddy and I'm balling and I'm doing these things. And she wasn't called a pick me. It was all yes, queen. It was all encouragement. And other women sharing their fond memories of their of their sugar baby experiences. I have no problem with the sugar babies. I really don't. It's not me. I'm not an older man of means, but if I was an older man of means, I would prefer, if not my wife, another woman that can relate to me. I just can't lay up next to no woman that you know, listens to Little Uzi Vert or even knows who Little Uzi Vert is. That's just not me. You know, I remember I think 23, and I went out on a date with a girl who was 19 years old. And I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't wait to get her home. She was a beautiful young sister, but I'm like, I've aged out. I'm like, how long have you been out of high school? She was 2 years out of high school. And I was already more than 2 years into college. And the age gap from 19 to 24 was too big for me. And I didn't even approach her. My homeboy, Terrence, remember? He was like, yo, this girl, he thinks anybody that does anything weird is compatible with me because I'm a vegan and all that. Anybody that does anything weird, a girl with a nose earring, she's perfect for me. So when we were both young and single, anytime he find any girl he thought was weird, he was like, I know the guy for you. Because I know a weirdo. And there's different types of weirdness. You know, all weirdos aren't together. All weirdos ain't the same. People think because you're vegan, anything that's not meat, you are willing to eat it. Like, oh, I found a hubcap. There's no meat in it. Here, eat it. You know, and I'm sick of people, just in case you inviting vegans over. We're no different than you in our food. We like our food seasoned and prepared and presented. Don't think, oh, there's no meat in it. Throw it at the vegans. That's not how veganism works. And I swear to you, I wish I could throw a dinner party, invite all meat eaters, and just get a slab of meat and put salt and boil a steak for 15 minutes, put some salt on it, and be like, there's meat. You eat meat, right? There's some meat. Eat the meat. Anyway, so if you're going to continue in this pick me phenomenon, I think we should continue to discuss it. And I know every time I bring this up, it really makes folks upset. But I got it. Sometimes I have to say some things that aren't proper. Black men and women are worthy of affection. We are worthy to be pursued. We are worthy to be wooed. We are worthy to be put on pedestals, even the rickety pedestal. Let me tell you something, brother. Don't think, even if you got the queen of the pick-me's, pick me must prime. Every pedestal that a black woman puts you on has a trap door on it. So be careful. Because she puts you on that pedestal, so when she pushes the button, the higher the pedestal, the harder it is for you to fall. I get on and off that pedestal 15 times a day. My thigh muscles are cut up. You can't tell because I'm sitting in this chair, but I got the strongest thigh muscles because I have to climb up and down that pedestal every 10 times, 50 times a day. That's just how relationships work. That's how courtship works, and you find somebody that finds, it's men and women, they find a man that they want, or they feel lonely and they desire to be in a relationship, and the dude starts making sure his fade is all way together, and he starts spraying these funky perfumes in his car, and don't let you eat in his car because he's planning on taking women out in his car. And then when he finds a woman, he starts acting different, and he can't pick up the phone, he don't meet his obligations to his homies. To me, it seems like on the base level, most of this stuff is pretty much us saying, because in another thing that I saw, everything that quote unquote pick-me's do, competition. Now, if you go to school and you got to make the best grades, if you open a business and you have to outdo your competitors. So things like competition, ambition, self-sacrifice for school. You can self-sacrifice, but black men or black relationships aren't worth the effort. The same effort that we put into our educational pursuits, our economic pursuits, our integrationist pursuits, putting it into another black person or black people as a whole is a wasted effort. I'm telling you, even if you disagree with me, and you're still going to get on these social media feeds, or you're going to travel in a circle with your friends, and y'all going to call out one of y'all other friends that's a pick me, look at the undertone of pro-blackness. Because yeah, I did some things I would have never done to win my wife's affection. I do things that I don't particularly want to do to sustain a healthy and balanced and mutually beneficial relationship with my spouse. And for everything I have to sacrifice of my time and effort and interest, I gain back tenfold. So it seems to go that I think that this pick me thing is not about uplifting or defending black women, but I think it's about the overall degradation and the commercialization and commodification of black relationships. And tomorrow, like I said, tomorrow for me is Friday, because when I leave the station, I'm going to crawl in a box in a fetal position. I'm going to stay offline because I know y'all going to be mad at me because, I'm defending pick-me's. I'm not really defending pick-me's. I see myself as critiquing the pick-me lexicon phenomenon. I'm going to talk about simps Friday, because I didn't get to get into this phenomenon of simps. And again, I think a simp, the fundamental definition of a simp as I see it functionally applied in the community and in social media, is that any black man that deems a black woman worthy of affection, worthy of deference, worthy of putting yourself out for, is a simp. Any black man that holds black women in high regard is a simp. And now they are, oh no, it's a man to do that. But again, we're going to go off of what they claim to be the definition, and we're going to go off of how it's applied. Because when you call people on this thing, they want to get real technical with you. Just like when I talk to religious people about the concept of God, the concept of blessing, and the concept of, being blessed and highly favored in an oppressive society where billions of people are going hungry, is a narcissistic, oh no, and then they want to try to be, but the way they try to, when they're defending it, and the way they apply it and live it, two different things. So anyway, Q4 Radio, Bro Diallo Show. Shout out to all my Patreon supporters. I work for y'all. I'm seriously. I would not be here for as long as I've been here. So if you support the Bro Diallo Show, please join me in thanking my Patreons. If you hate the Bro Diallo Show, don't blame me. Blame the Patreons, because I wouldn't be here not for them. And I will be back Friday. We're going to talk about, we're going to wrap this up. I'm not even going to do a part 3. I'm going to wrap this up, and we're going to be on to something new this Friday. So Q4 Radio, Bro Diallo Show, AM 1680, iTunes Radio, and Q4.org. Also check out Diallo Kenyatta for archives, more recent archives. You can find Diallo Kenyatta. If you become a Patreon, you can find the Bro Diallo archives dating back to our first show, full unfettered access to downloads for Bro Diallo Show. All right, we good? All right, so I'll see y'all Friday, Q4 Radio, AM 1680. What's going on? Wait, cue the music. What is going on? Oh, here we go.